Welcome to the City of Oceanside's council chambers, to our council meeting of April 6, 2022. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order and ask for roll call.
Mayor Sanchez.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kine.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen. Here. Councilmember Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you. We have a couple of proclamations this evening. And the first one is proclamation in honor of National Fair Housing Month. So we do have with us today Inez Williams, the chairperson for our Housing Commission. And we also have with us Danielle Talliard from Legal Aid Society of San Diego County. Please come on down. Yes, please clap. Yes. This is one of the main functions that we do here at the city, and that is about our housing. And so we are very serious, very committed, and we have very committed staff who we probably should have down here too. I see that we have our Neighborhood Services Director, Leilani Hines. So I'd like to go ahead and read the proclamation and then hand the mic over. This is a proclamation in honor of National Fair Housing Month, April 2022. Whereas April 6, 2022 marks the 54th anniversary of the passage of the Federal Fair Housing Act, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national commitment, enunciates a national commitment to fair housing without regard to race, color, religion, gender, national origin, familial status, and disability. And whereas the Fair Housing Act was signed on April 11th, 1968, just 1 week after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas this year's theme of National Fair Housing Month is Fair Housing, More Than Just Words, reflecting a national commitment to advancing equity in housing, securing equal access to housing opportunities for all, and the importance of increasing public awareness of everyone's right to fair housing. And whereas the California Fair Employment and Housing Act of 1963, as amended, offers additional protections for fair housing without regard to marital status, age, source of income, sexual orientation, medical condition, gender identity, source of income, and other arbitrary status. And whereas the City of Oceanside, in partnership with the Legal Aid Society of San Diego, Inc., is committed to federal and state fair housing laws by continuing to address discrimination in our community, supporting programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and implementing partnership efforts with other organizations to help assure every American of his or her right to fair housing. And whereas Fair Housing Month has helped open doors of opportunity for countless families since its passage, making significant progress in achieving equal housing access for all individuals. And whereas the City of Oceanside acknowledges the efforts of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and countless other state agencies, local governments, and community members for promoting fair housing. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Esther C. Sanchez, on behalf of the City of Oceanside, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as National Fair Housing Month in the City of Oceanside, and encourage all Oceanside residents to become more aware of their rights and responsibilities within our communities, with special gratitude to the partnership we have with the Oceanside Office of Legal Aid Society of San Diego. Thank you. And as I said, this is Inez Williams, who is the chair of our Housing Commission, who she actually does a lot of really cool things for the city of Oceanside, one of which is coming up having to do with some scholarships that I keep wanting to push because, April this month is the deadline for applying for scholarships for Oceanside residents going to college. Yeah. So Inez, I'm going to hand this over to you about fair housing, and excuse me for talking about that scholarship thing, but it's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sanchez, and thank you for the plug. So we will be in person this year since you opened the door for the scholarship. I'm the chairperson for the City of Oceanside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship. And so we will be in person this year. We will be having our garden reception here in Oceanside. I'm excited about that. It's Friday, May 27th that we're actually gonna open that up. And we're inviting all to come out and support. Your resources and your funds are vitally important to helping our students to receive scholarships to be able to go off to college. So thank you, Mayor Sanchez. Thank you to the council members as well for all of your support. Now I'm going to switch hats again and go back to being the chairperson for the City of Oceanside Housing Commission. I just want to thank each and every one of you, to our leadership here in Oceanside. The Housing Commission, in conjunction with HUD, has made a commitment here within the city to be able to ensure that every citizen who wants to have access, to be able to ensure that every citizen has access to affordable housing. And so it may not look like it, but our leadership here in Oceanside, the mayor, the council members, we're working on it. We know that there's a housing crisis, not only here in Oceanside, but there's a housing crisis within this nation. We're doing what we can do to close that gap here within the city of Oceanside. And so I am thankful for our leadership. I'm thankful for being able to work with our Director Hines here, and just continue to support us. We need the support of the community to be able to do the job that we have been asked to do. So thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon, and Mayor Sanchez and members of the council. I just thank you for this proclamation. It is my pleasure to accept it today in recognition of National Fair Housing Month. And as the city's fair housing provider, Legal Aid's mission is to prevent housing discrimination and to make sure there is equal access and opportunity for all within the city of Oceanside. Legal Aid has assisted over 150 Oceanside residents with housing-related issues this year so far, and expects that the demand for fair housing services will continue to increase with changes in legislation, the effects of the pandemic, and the current housing market, making it difficult for residents to find and stay housed. Legal Aid is committed and proud to serve the residents of Oceanside and dedicated to advancing justice through advocacy, outreach, and education. Thank you.
Sure, why not? So thank you all for being here, and it is National Fair Housing Month. And as the Director of Housing, I just want to reiterate that housing does matter for our community, particularly when you have such a diverse community like Oceanside in terms of economics, in terms of ethnicity and race, and all the other protected classes. Place matters as well. And so making sure that our families, our children, and the future generations have the choice of where they live, and having that choice and the opportunities that choice gives them. So thank you for supporting us in the housing division and the work that we do, and we're looking forward to April as Fair Housing Month and Housing for All.
Thank you very much. We could have a picture. Wait, hold on. Picture. All right, our next proclamation is National Beer Day in Oceanside, okay? Very, very excited because this is one of our, really significant contributors to our local economy. And in the house today, we have Bobby from Northern Pine Brewery. Come on down, Bobby. You've got a special guest with you. as well as Tom from Oceanside Brewing Company. And come on down. And I can't do this without Gumaro Escarcega, the CEO of Main Street, because Gumaro is always behind the scenes. Now, I just learned about this National Day, okay? So in doing some research, I thought, wow, this is such a really cool thing because Oceanside has really, I mean, the commitment, the investment that you all have done in Oceanside, some actually by local Osiders, it's just been pretty phenomenal. The entrepreneurship, you know, the craftsmanship. So I do have a proclamation here, and it is, again, in honor of National Beer Day in Oceanside. Whereas the Cullen-Harrison Act legalizing the sale of beer with an alcohol content of 3.2% by weight was enacted by Congress and signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on March 22nd, 1933, becoming effective on April 7th, 1933. And whereas the Cullen-Harrison Act led to the repeal of the 18th Amendment on December 5th, 1933, with the ratification of the 21st Amendment to the United States Constitution. And whereas the craft beer movement began in California and continues to lead the nation with creative, innovative beers, passionate brewers, and beer enthusiasts. And whereas the craft beer movement spread into San Diego County, where Carl Strauss, Ballast Point, Stone, and many others set up shop and helped establish the West Coast IPA style with innovation and collaboration, triggering entrepreneurship. And whereas the craft beer tourism in Oceanside has tapped into the local farm-to-table movement, creating a local Oside culture that is unique and popular, contributing so much to the local economy. And whereas Oceanside craft beer entrepreneurs and innovators, many of them local Osiders, have invested enthusiastically and creatively into our economy, resulting in the establishment of these phenomenal craft breweries: Breakwater Brewing Company, Stone Brewing, Tap That, Legacy Brewing Company, Bagby Beer Company, Belching Beaver Brewery, Oceanside Brewing Company, Black Plague Brewing, Northern Pine Brewing, Kilowatt Brewing, Booze Brothers Brewing Company, Craft Coast Beer and Tacos, good combination, by the way, South O Brewing Company, and Tipping Pint, brewery. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Esther C. Sanchez, on behalf of the City of Oceanside, do hereby proclaim April 7th, tomorrow, 2022, as National Beer Day in Oceanside, and urge all beer enthusiasts to visit and enjoy one of the city's fine breweries. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. And thank you, citizens of Oceanside and other supporters. This is a pretty big honor. We've been here since 2017, right up the street on Pierview, at the end of Pierview here on Horn Street. We've had some growing pains. We've overcome a lot. City's always been behind our back. They've always helped us out when we needed them. So again, thank you for all your support. We are open Wednesdays through Sunday. We're 3 to 9 on Wednesday, Thursday, noon to 9:30 on Friday, Saturday, and noon to 9 on Sundays. So come out and have a pint and enjoy a day with us. Cheers.
We'd like to thank the city. This is a great city. We love doing business here, and we look forward to the next 10 years.
Thanks, guys. And I just want to say it's a great collaboration effort with the breweries that we have in downtown. Major fundraisers that we do and support our retail market here has been enormous in the last 7-8 years. And yeah, we're very honored to be up here and collaborate with our breweries. And tomorrow, visit your brewery nearby so you can support and toast one for all of us. So cheers to everybody. Actually, I do have a little plug. Sorry. We do have an event. If you guys want to see these guys featured, it's going to be our Mother's Day to Sweet event on May 7th. It's the weekend of Mother's Day. You can go to mainstreetoceanside.com for the tickets and availability. So there's also VIP events to support and come see these breweries here. Thanks.
Oh, okay, got it. Future generation. Here.
Don't steal his phone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Closed section report, Mr. Mellon.
Thank you. The council met in closed session to discuss item 1, conference with the labor negotiator on the status of negotiations with the OCEA. Item 2, public employee appointment involving the city manager. There's no action under the Brown Act under items 1 or 2 to report.
Thank you. Next is consent calendar items 4 through 12. Any requests to pull by the public?
There are no requests to pull by the public.
Move approval.
Okay, I'm going to ask that 10 be pulled. We've got a motion and a second. Please vote for a balance.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you. Item number 10 is the approval of a program development agreement with NG Services US, Inc. for an integrated energy assessment for the city and authorization for the city manager or designee to execute the agreement. What do we have? Okay. Thank you. I do have a question here because the way the staff reports reads is that this is for an assessment that if we choose NG, then we will not have to pay the $50,000. But if we do choose NG, so this is really a two-step into potentially into one, then they will be going forward on the projects. Will this be based on the actual analysis that they do?
Yes, that is correct. So I can walk you through, Michael Gossman, Assistant City Manager.
Yes,
I can
thank
walk
you.
you through the steps involved and what will take place. The first step, and that's the part that's sort of free of charge to us with that caveat of it's valued at $50,000, is this audit of all of our audit and assessment of all of our facilities and the potential for energy efficiencies or solar or other energy creating devices that would save the city money. They will go through and they'll do that audit. They'll identify specific projects that would be a net savings to the city. And then if we choose to move forward, we would move forward with NG. If we chose not to move forward with NG and just say, thank you for the audit, we're not interested in going any further on any of these projects, no matter how valuable, then we would be obliged to pay them $50,000 for the audit.
Okay, so if it turns out during this analysis, during this process, that say someone else is better, somehow more either qualified or is willing to provide a better service for less cost, any of those things happen, then the city is not obligated. We can actually not go forward with NG?
We are not obliged to move forward with NG, but if we choose to use one of the projects that they've identified and done the audit on, and we don't use NG, then we would be obligated to pay them $50,000 for the investment grade
Right.
audit.
Do we have an idea of how long we're anticipating this relationship to be? Say we do agree to go with them. Is it like a specific period of time or number of projects?
It would depend on what projects were identified, so it's pretty hard to say what the long-term outlook would be. The first step is that investment grade audit, and that would be wrapped up by the beginning of the fall, end of summer, and we would come back and we'd be able to provide the results of that report to you at that time.
So is that initial $50,000, should the city decide not to move forward with NG, is that competitive for that analysis?
Yes, yeah, we did do a request for qualifications. We received about 6 different statements of qualifications from different firms. NG, I believe, was the only firm that actually even gave the option for it to be free if we move forward. but the other firms were all in that $50,000 to $75,000 range of what it would cost to pay for that type of audit.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Gossman. Okay, I move approval. There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you. Next are general items, beginning with item number 13, which is rejection of all bids for the construction of the new Fire Station Number 1 and authorization for the city manager to re-advertise the project, beginning with a report by our city engineer, Brian Thomas.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, Brian Thomas, City Engineer. The item before you this evening is item number 13, rejection of all bids for Fire Station Number 1. Staff is recommending that City Council reject all bids and authorize the city engineer to re-advertise the project. In December 2021, 7 general contractors pre-qualified to submit bids for the project. 5 bids were received on February 24th, 2022, which ranged from $12.3 million to $15.49 million. Project estimate was between $16 and $18.5 million. Currently, we are still waiting on a NEPA environmental clearance as a requirement for our DOD grant through the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. Staff is continuing to work with the State Historic Preservation Office and the Native American Heritage Commission in order to obtain concurrence with the city's CEQA documents as an exemption of as a categorical exemption as an infill development. Staff has completed its consultations with the San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians, the Rincon Band of Louisiana Indians, and the San Luis Rey Band of Mission Indians. As noted above, 5 bids were received in February. Most of the bids contained some type of clerical error. In discussion with the city attorney's office, due to the nature of the errors and the number of concerns raised from a number of bidders, staff consulted with the city attorney's office and has determined that it would be in the best interest to reject all bids and to re-advertise in this case. Re-advertisement will allow for the completion of the NEPA process, and pursuant to Public Contract Code 20166, City Council has the discretion to reject all bids and re-advertise the project at its discretion. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation to reject all bids and authorize the city engineer to re-advertise the project. I remain available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Do we have any requests to speak from the public?
There are no requests to speak from the public on this item.
Okay, so to the council, Councilmember Weiss.
Move approval, staff recommendation.
There is a motion and a second. Please vote.
Thank you.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is item number 14. That is adoption of a resolution approving the finance application with the State Water Resources Control Board, Clean Water State Revolving Fund, in the amount of $22.5 million, acceptance of grant funding in the amount of $5 million from the state in lieu of SRF funds, appropriation of the grant funds into the appropriate accounts, and authorization for the city manager or designee to execute all related documents upon receipt from the state. We begin with a report by Ms. Carrie Dale, our Water Utilities Director. Ms. Dale?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Carrie Dale, Water Utilities Director, here to speak on item number 14. In this item, we're recommending that City Council adopt a closing resolution for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund financial assistance, as well as accept a grant in the amount of $5 million from the state in lieu of state revolving funds. The overall project consists of recycled water infrastructure, including a reservoir and pump station located adjacent to the Fire Mountain Reservoir, next to Eternal Hills Cemetery. A second component consists of 24,500 linear feet of recycled water pipeline that will go to the Arrowwood community to serve recycled water to that community. Council previously approved an action allowing staff to provide an application to the state for financial assistance and approved environmental clearances as part of the process. The State Board provides grants and low-interest loans through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which allows the city to pay for infrastructure over a longer term rather than cash funding. Typically, they're 20 to 30-year terms at interest rates that are set at 50% of the average rates for federal obligation bonds. Since 2010, these rates have ranged from 0.8% to 2.7%, and I'm pleased to say that the interest rate that we are being offered is at the lower end of the spectrum at 0.8%, with the annual debt service estimated at $659,000. The loan term is a 30-year loan with total interest over the term of $2.256 million. This table shows from a high level the overall capital funding sources for the water utility for a 3-year period. It includes a $69 million EPA WIFIA loan, grants in the amount of $28.2 million, including the $5 million grant being considered under this action, the $17.5 million state revolving fund loan under this action, revenue bonds in the amount of $30 million that were previously authorized and are nearly spent right now, and cash from ratepayers as well as developers in the amount of $127 million. So the total capital need over a 3-year period is approximately $272,000. Sorry, $272 million. Yes, lots of zeros there. So this is a comprehensive strategy for us to fund these projects over the long term. The total funding to be received is $22.5 million, which is broken out into $17.5 million of the loan, and then 2 grants that were approved by the voters in 2000 and 2014 as the water bonds in the amount of $5 million. Staff is recommending that City Council adopt a closing resolution for the loan and accept grant funding in the amount of $5 million from the state in lieu of issuing loans from the state. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Dale. Do we have any requests to speak from the public on this item?
We do not have any requests on this item.
All right, so back to the council. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Ms. Dale, thank you for that presentation. Couple questions. Could you answer for myself and the public what this recycled water would be used for? Who would be purchasing it from the city? And just explain those benefits briefly.
Sure, thank you for the question, Councilmember Rodriguez. The recycled water is typically used for landscaping. So we do have a few golf courses that are using the water right now. The sports complex at El Corazon is using recycled water. Under this proposed phase of the recycled water system, water would go to golf courses as well as green belts. We also have a phase that will deliver recycled water to the cemetery, and it will offset potable water that we'd otherwise need to purchase or produce locally.
Okay. And is there any sort of projections on this $22 million funding for these phased projects on recoupment of what it would take to recoup, or is this just a cost and we are going to charge similar rates to what we're charging now, and there's really not going to be any monetary benefit to the city or the ratepayer?
So on the rate perspective, the rates are very favorable for recycled water use. There is an upfront cost for users to convert, to their irrigation system over to use recycled water, although there are some grant programs.
What does that look like as far as cost?
So a typical golf course might have several $100,000 in converting all of their equipment, or they might be able to do a low-cost conversion where they're just replacing some of the sprinkler heads and doing some of the signage that's required by the state. But the rate itself, once you start using water, is about 50% of the potable rate that would otherwise be used for those facilities.
So besides, let's say, city-owned facilities that would be able to benefit from this, do you have any ratepayers that understand those infrastructure investment costs that would be willing to move forward on participating, or are we just sending out recycled water to individuals that will not sign up?
So there is a mandatory use ordinance that was adopted several years ago, and there is a master plan that was also developed. Council also approved a contract with a specialty conversion contractor that meets with proposed users and assists them with the permitting process and the conversion process. So that's been ongoing for several years.
Okay, so Arrowwood Board of Directors is prepared to take on these costs once this reaches their destination?
Although I have not had any personal conversations with them, I do know that they have reached out to Councilmember Weiss in the past. I can certainly circle back with you on what those conversations have been.
Okay.
But if the intent is to build infrastructure that goes nowhere, that's not at all our intent today. We'll certainly make sure that they're committed to receiving the water before we move forward with those phases.
Okay. And then what conversations have you had with the farmers on bringing this infrastructure to our agricultural lands? Because from my perspective, being this is my district with over 3,000 acres of farmland, these resources and infrastructure seem best invested toward agriculture in the near term versus the long term.
Yes, and this component here in the purple shows some of the pipeline that needs to be constructed along North River Road and continue to the east to get to the Morrow Hills area. We've had several meetings with many of the farmers and, for instance, the tomato growers, some of the avocado farmers, the winery. We've had conversations with them, and we've also been looking at purchasing some land for a reservoir in that area. The project has been on hold until we've had some more clarification from the general plan amendment, which would include the Morrow Hills area, so we have some certainty on what would be constructed there. But that's certainly some conversations that we need to have before we move forward with that later phase that would deliver recycled water there.
Okay. I'm not in a position to move forward on financing and committing our city to loan costs on this program without having a solidified plan to benefit our farming community and prioritizing infrastructure to that community, and also having commitments from end users on what that infrastructure investment cost would look like in order to participate. I think this is, I understand there's $5 million on the table, but there's also $17 million of commitments from our city that we're going to have to pay interest on before moving forward. And so I would like to hold off on this until we have a better end game plan in place that prioritizes our agricultural lands.
What would happen to the $5 million grant fund if we do not move?
My understanding
Take
is
action
that
day.
we would be able to accept the $5 million without the loan, but I would caution that if we are unable to move forward and then go back at a later date, it's likely that we will have a higher interest rate. This is the lowest interest rate that's been offered in a 12-year period. You could approve the contract this evening and ask for us to hold on expending any funds until we come up with those contracts, if that's your desire.
Right. Yeah, we've been working on this for the last, I want to say 12 years, where when our farmers came to the city of Oceanside talking about the high cost of water, all the high costs for continuing, farming. And so agritourism and doing recycled water were the two things that we actually committed to moving forward on at, in fact, their request. So the fact that we don't have actual contracts now, I don't think well, let me ask you that. The fact that we don't have contracts right now with individuals, is that going to be a problem moving forward?
I don't think so. I think it's part of the overall project
Process.
plan to be moving forward with those as we design and construct the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, they were here in the chambers, a lot of discussion. I know that there are several people on the dais now who were not here at that time and were not part of those discussions, but I do feel good about moving forward with this because of those, number one, interests in continuing farming, number two, that there have been, very solid discussions on this. So I'm going to move that we adopt the resolution and accept the grant funds. I see no lights. There is a motion and a second. No other requests to speak. Please vote.
Motion approved, 401. Rodriguez, no.
Thank you. Next item is item number 15. Mr. Mullen, can we take these individually? 15 is A and B.
Yeah, you could take them however you would like,
Okay.
but I thought the intent was to have one staff presentation. We have two reports, so the idea is we'd have one staff presentation cover both items, and if it's agreeable to council, you could include them all in one vote, or you could have two
So
votes.
one motion will handle it?
If you specify both agreements.
Because
Yes.
property management is speaking as to item B, and Ms. Dale is speaking as to item A, so it's two
It's
different
agendized
statutes.
as one item, 15A and 15B, kind of to be more efficient, because they're really related to one
Related,
another.
right.
And so it's hard to do one without the other.
Okay, and if there is a different vote, we can we can let the vote reflect that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so item number 15 is our actions related to a solid waste franchise agreement. This is our waste hauler agreement. It's in, there are two parts to this, A and B. A is approval of the franchise agreement with Waste Management of California for recyclable materials, organic materials, and solid waste collection, organic materials processing, and disposal of solid waste services to commence January 1st, 2024. An authorization for the city manager to make any non-substantive changes to the franchise agreement and execute the franchise agreement. That is Part A. Part B is approval of amendments to the existing property lease agreement and operating agreement with Agri-Services Recycling, Inc., hereinafter Agri-Service, to modify the terms of each agreement to expire December 31st, 2023, approval of a new property lease agreement with Agri-Service for a 10-year term commencing January 1st, 2024, with annual estimated revenue to the city of $164,000 for use for property known as the El Corazon Compost Facility located at El Corazon in Oceanside, and authorization for the city manager to execute the amendments and new lease agreement upon receipt of all supporting documents. We're going to begin with Part A, and that is with a report by Ms. Carrie Dale, Water Utilities Director, and then Ms. Gutierrez will be addressing Part B. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Ms. Dale.
Thank you for the introduction. You've provided the synopsis of the actions today, so I'm just going to move forward with jumping in on item 15A. Carrie Dale, Water Utilities Director. and I will be speaking on the franchise agreement with Waste Management of California. As you're well aware, this franchise agreement that currently exists with Waste Management expires at the end of 2023, and council has directed staff to negotiate a franchise agreement with Waste Management of California to achieve regulatory compliance with many of the regulations that are coming out of the state. The service enhancements shown on this slide were reviewed in the February workshop with City Council and selected to be included in the franchise agreement before you today. There were two non-substantial changes to the contract language that were agreed to between Waste Management and the City Attorney's Office since the posting of the agreement in the agenda packet. The first change clarifies that the new rate schedule be approved by the City Council at a later date and under a separate action. The separate change provides a minor edit to indemnity at the City Attorney's request. City revenues under the new agreement in the form of a collector payment or franchise reimbursement, administrative fee, and SB 1383 fee are similar in amounts in the new agreement as compared to the current one, with a slight uptick in revenues going to the general fund and to the solid waste enterprise. This is Table 2, which is found in your staff report. It shows a breakdown of costs that have been provided by Waste Management and where they are going under the proposed franchise agreement. The total revenue coming in under the agreement is $38.3 million, which includes payments that will be paid to the city. I took that same chart and broke it out by the revenues coming in or expenses for Waste Management as well as being paid to the city, shown in green. The total amount of the proposed contract going to Waste Management's close to 89%. It's 88.7%, with 11.3% going to the city in comparison to the current contract that's 84% going to the Waste Management and 15.7% going to the city. Typical rates for residential customers starting on January 1st of 2024 are expected to increase by approximately 40% for services to ensure compliance with the state organics mandates. Commercial rates increases are slightly lower than residential rates, however, they are nonetheless still substantial. Staff's recommendation this evening does not include the approval of initial rates in Exhibit G3 that you were distributed this afternoon. Rates will come under a separate action. So the late distribution contained Exhibits G1 through G3, which contain the franchise agreement under consideration this evening, the Waste Management proposal, as well as the proposed rates. And I'm going to turn it over to Vicki to discuss item 15B.
Are there any questions as to A from the council? No? Okay, I'm going to go forward with B.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Vicki Gutierrez, Real Estate Manager for the Public Works Department, Property Management Division. So the item I'm bringing before you is for approval of the existing lease agreement, amendments to the existing lease agreement, the operating agreement, and a new lease agreement with Agri-Service Recycling, Inc. So I'll give you a little background. In 1995, the city entered into a service agreement with Agri-Service to build and operate a composting facility to process all the city's curbside residential yard waste. The primary objective at that time was to use the compost to assist with erosion control and soil stabilization during reclamation at the El Corazon site. In 2009, the city entered into a property lease agreement and operating agreement with Agri-Service for a 15-year term. That was to build and operate a new composting facility to El Corazon and for the purposes of developing, operating, and managing a composting facility. So under the existing agreements, Agri-Service pays the city a percentage rent of the commercial revenue and product sales generated from the facility. The city is amending the existing operating agreement and the property lease agreement to terminate on December 31st of 2023. We will enter into a new property lease that will commence on January 1st of 2024 for continued use by Agri-Service of the El Corazon property for a 10-year term, and that would be to expire on December 31st of 2033. The city will not be renewing the existing operating agreement in place. Agri-Service will be entering into a processing and composting agreement directly with Waste Management to receive and process the city's organic materials. And with our new lease agreement, the city will continue to receive monthly percentage rent for use of the property from Agri-Service. Agri-Service will continue to provide the city's resident compost giveaway program made available to Oceanside residents. One additional item is that the city or Agri-Service may terminate the agreement for any reason given 180 days advance written notice. If the city terminates, the city is required to pay the unamortized portion of the cost of any improvements installed by Agri-Service. However, the city is not required to compensate Agri-Service if there's a termination in the event of a default of the property lease or the processing and composting agreement that they have in place with Waste Management. So we would like to recommend that you approve the franchise agreement and authorize the city manager to execute that with the Waste Management of California for recyclable materials, organic materials, solid waste collection, organic materials processing, and disposal of waste services. Authorize the city manager to make any non-substantive changes to the franchise agreement and approve Amendment 2 to the property lease agreement, Amendment 2 to the operating agreement, and approve a new property lease agreement with Agri-Service Recycling for use of El Corazon Materials Processing Facility, and that would commence January 1st, 2024. We ask that you authorize the city manager to execute the amendments, the new lease agreement, and the franchise agreement. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. That recommendation covers both Part A and Part B.
That covers both. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Thank
the
you.
Honorable Mayor, it does.
Thank you. Do we have any requests to speak from the public?
Yes, we do. We have one request from Katie Taylor.
Just real quickly, I'm a little dumbfounded, but I think this is going to really increase our rates in Oceanside for trash service. I mean, staggering. I didn't know the numbers would turn out like this, but I do recommend you stay with Waste Management because I don't want to see Republic Services anywhere near Oceanside because it'd probably be 3 times that amount, and I don't want to see a strike like the poor people in Chula Vista and other cities in California suffered from. But man, those rate increases, that is a lot of money.
Thank you. And no other requests to speak?
No other requests on this item.
Okay. Staff, on that, I did have a question. So we're talking for those who have the 96-gallon carts, it's almost a $10 increase plus a 40% increase on top of that? On top, that would be 40% of the $9.25. Is that right?
Let's pull up the table.
Yeah, there's no difference between the 64 and the 96. Very little difference.
That appears to be correct.
The 40% is on top of the new almost $10 increase.
No,
That's the question I had.
no.
Or is-
I
It
may,
says plus.
The $8
let me have
increase is a
Colleen
40%.
handle that question.
Jesus.
Just want to make, I know this is coming back to us, but this is a good question here.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Colleen Foster, the Environmental Officer with the Water Utilities Department. The overall rate increase, the 40% in 6, is the same across the board. However, the 32-gallon cart, the standard cart rate, is still set at a lower rate. So it's
Right.
$28.35.
My question is, I know and I've got 2 minutes to respond to this. That 40.5% is plus the new plus $10,
No.
right?
No, it is
That
not.
That's
is
what it
40%. $9 is 40%.
Okay, all right, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Keim.
I'm going to move approval, but before I want to at least address the price concerns, we have been working diligently the last several months to really get the best deal we could for our ratepayers. Much of this price increase comes from SB 1383, which in our state, in all their infinite wisdom, likes to pass down these regulations that they don't pay for, and then they're stuck on the backs of ratepayers. So it's been frustrating. I can tell you that's been our concern from the start. We've watched everything closely. I'm not happy about the rate increases. It's the position we're in. I think we've gotten to an acceptable point. As you know, as much as it's difficult to have an $8 increase, in 2024. But I'd like to make move approval of staff's recommendation.
Second.
A and B. Councilmember Rodriguez.
So Sacramento likes to move on policies with respect to offsetting climate change at the expense of you, the California resident. And I disagree with that. And until local jurisdictions start to fight back against the nonsense coming out of Sacramento, they're going to keep passing regulations and expecting you to pay for it. San Diego County has the highest rates in the nation for electricity. We have some of the highest rates on gas. We pay the highest taxes in the nation, yet we have the highest poverty rates. We have some of the highest crime rates, and I'm sick and tired of Sacramento. And you know what? I'm not going to get behind this, and I'm not going to support it, and I hope my colleagues follow. We need to send a message to Sacramento that if they want to pass this nonsense, then maybe they need to waive their annual salaries to help cover the cost of this. So I will not be supporting this, and I vote no, and I vote that we push back against this ridiculous policy.
Thank you. No other requests to speak. With all due respect to my colleagues, I do not believe that we have done enough to get the lowest cost for these services and the best services. In the middle of this competition, we actually eliminated the competition and gave direction to staff to simply extend the contract. We're extending the contract. Without that competition, to me, we're paying more for less services. We're not getting new trucks. We're not getting new carts. I am very concerned about the lack of education and outreach. The city of Oceanside, I understand that there's some feelings about the law, okay? But we are required to comply. And if we do not comply, it's not going to go on waste management. It's going to go on the city of Oceanside, and we would be paying the fees. So my concern is that there is not enough education and outreach, as well as not the best contract we could have had. For both commercial and residential. Commercial, if there is not that compliance, and they don't understand that, they're going to get fined significantly. Our shops, our restaurants, they're going to get fined, and I'm not happy about that at all. This is already happening now, where we have very low compliance. While the fines are not haven't started yet, as soon as this contract starts, that is going to start. Customer service, we need customer service here. We don't need it. We don't need a digital voice on the other side, and I'm very, very concerned about that. And that is the waste hauler contract with, be it Waste Management or any of the other 2 or 3 waste haulers that we have in San Diego County. My concern about 15B is not consistent with the contract. The waste management contract is for 7 years. The contract with Agri-Services is for 10 years. And there was no analysis, a study, facilities analysis. There are obviously different things happening at El Corazon, and there's nothing in that in this study. Very, very concerned. So staff, what happens if there's this language in there in the contract that talks about if the city terminates the lease as a condition of early termination, the city shall be required to pay Agri-Service the unamortized portion of the cost of any improvements, unamortized, which doesn't make sense at all. Why is that?
So Honorable Mayor, council members, to answer your question. So it is typical for, this is a use agreement. They're using our premises when a tenant, any tenant typically puts in infrastructure improvements in the property. They want to have a lease term that brings
Yeah, my question is, why weren't they the same terms? Why is one 7, 1 10?
Well, they're two different items. One is a franchise agreement. The other is a lease agreement. A lease agreement, it doesn't have to be coterminous with that agreement. It's basically they're having 3 more years of use of the agreement.
But the use is,
and we have no.
see, it's confusing because the actual use is this contract between Waste Management and Agri-Services. So that is the concern that I have. Also,
If I can jump in on that point really quick, the franchise agreement has a 3-year option to extend.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you were aware of that.
But it is 7. The base is 7.
The base is 7. We have an option to extend it for 3.
Right, got it. The other question that I have is that what if it's Waste Management that decides not to use Agri-Services and decides to use a different facility or ends up creating its own facility? What happens then?
That's not the city terminating, Honorable Mayor. That would be Waste Management terminating, and they have provisions in their agreement that they would have to, I don't know the exact terms, but I know there are provisions in the agreement. We are assured that they're in their agreement, they're not in our agreement, that they would basically have to pay back the unamortized portion of their improvements, something to that effect. That would not be on the city. It's only if the city terminates the agreement. And if we're in an agreement, if they're using the facility, if that agreement, if the waste agreement terminates, it doesn't necessarily mean that the use agreement needs to terminate. They can continue on, if they choose to, doing business. They still have clients to do business. So that's why we kept
Right,
it separate.
commercial, but that would not be
That's why
residential.
we're eliminating the 2 existing agreements to become just a lease, a use agreement.
So if Waste Management is not able to use Agri-Services, say, for example, Cal Recycle decides, no, this is not in compliance. If they decide to use another route, like, for example, their fallback was Tulare facility in Tulare, what would happen then?
If they would, I guess they would be terminating their services, that agreement with Agri-Service. Our agreement would continue on.
Has Cal Recycle approved the Agri-Services facility that they intend to build?
We haven't. That if they build any new facilities, those facilities would go through a permanent process. So
there is no approval at this point
of any new infrastructure? Is that what you're asking? No, not at this point.
All right. Thank you.
Those are still to be determined.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Keim?
Okay.
Sorry, my time is running out. Sorry.
I understand.
It's not your time, it's my time.
I just want to clear a couple things up. We didn't simply extend. I'm not sure what the mayor's recollection was. We negotiated with Waste Management for the new contract. So we amended it. Also, I think the mayor is concerned about rates, but then the same sentence, she says we need to do more outreach and education, more this, more that. That's what makes rates go up. So I'm confused about how we're going to lower rates and do that. So, I mean, that's what we've been working on this whole thing is right-sizing the contract to get the best services at the most affordable price for our city. So with that, again, I've moved staff recommendation
I think the
forward.
motion's already on the floor.
And it's seconded, so I'd like a vote.
Councilmember Weiss.
I have a question for Ms. Dale. Is what's before us compliant with SB 1383?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. As Deputy Mayor Kime mentioned, and going back to that meeting where we stopped the negotiations, I believe at that point in time, staff came forward with a specific recommendation to award the franchise agreement to Republic. And at that point, I believe that agreement was valued at well over $40 million. So the $38 million that's before us, I think, is a result of a negotiation by staff to look out for the broader interests of our ratepayers who are going to bear the burden of this. So with that, I'm
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 3-2. Sanchez Rodriguez, no.
Thank you. It is now 6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and take up the public hearing item that we have on the agenda tonight. That is item number 17, adoption of a resolution approving submission of the 2022 to 2023 Public Housing Agency Plan for the Housing Choice Voucher Program to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, with the inclusion of changes made to the PHA plan as a result of public comments, and authorization for the executive director or designee to execute any and all related documents for submittal. I'd like to go ahead and open this public hearing and request disclosures by, here we are sitting as commissioners. So commissioners, regarding constituent contacts and correspondence.
staff.
It's the staff report.
Staff.
Mr. Navarro, do we have any correspondence and or petitions?
The city clerk's office has not received any correspondence or petition on this item.
Thank you. We're going to begin with a report by Ms. Leilani Hines, our Housing and Neighborhood Services Director. Ms. Hines?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, public here this evening. Tonight, we are presenting for your consideration the Oceanside Housing Authority's Public Housing Agency, or PHA, plan for its Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as the Section 8 Rental Assistance Program, for this upcoming fiscal year 22-23. And as you know, we are required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Housing Authority to hold that public hearing to allow for public comments in consideration as part of its public housing plan. As the mayor set forth, tonight we are recommending that the Community Development Commission of the Oceanside Housing Authority adopt a resolution that approves the submission of the 2022-2023 Public Housing Agency Plan for the Housing Choice Voucher Program to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, with the inclusion, if any, changes are made to the PHA plan as a result of the public comments either received this evening or previously, as none have been made, and then authorize the executive director or his designee to execute any and all related documents for approval. So each year, to be eligible for the Section 8 program and implementation for our community, we have to do a few things, one of which is to submit this PHA annual plan to HUD. It really represents our application for the program, and that needs to be done by April 17th of each year, and that's done after a 45-day public review and comment period. The Housing Department did not receive any comments to date on the PHA plan as well. That public comment period began on Friday, February 18th. And then tonight to consider the annual plan at this public hearing by the governing body, the Community Development Commission. The format of the annual plan utilizes a HUD streamlined annual plan template, so it's really pretty much given to us by HUD and we fill in the blanks. And it covers any changes that may have been made to our program and then talks about what's our progress towards the 5-year goals. And those were set forth and adopted by the CDC in March 2020. So in terms of the annual plan and what it addresses the addition of the 43 emergency housing vouchers that we were granted by HUD in 2021. We have an estimated availability of about $23.2 million in funding for approximately 1,600 vouchers and for the administration of the program. Consistent with those adopted 5-year goals, we're trying to expand the voucher program when funds are available, and we did that through the receipt of the vouchers available from the Emergency Housing Voucher Program. We are aiming to improve our management of the program. The Section 8 Management Assessment Program, or CMAP, has been waived for the past few fiscal years due to COVID and the resulting effects on staffing and administration. But despite those waivers, we have hired part-time staff to address staffing resources. We have provided training to new staff. We are monitoring staff's performance, and we are trying to be consistent in our administration of the program with our adopted administrative guidelines for the program. And with our FSS, or Family Self-Sufficiency Coordinator, we have 2 in-house housing navigators. Through our resource centers, we're striving to provide information to the community that they need that's going to assist them in their daily lives and hopefully improve their quality of life. So just giving you a little context of the program and who we're serving by the Section 8 program, or rental assistance by the numbers. Our households that are being assisted are at the extremely low income level. They have an average annual income of just over $21,000 a year. On average, they pay about $507 of their portion of the rent. We're primarily serving smaller households. 48% are single-person households, 42% are small households of 2 to 4 people, and large households only comprise about 10% of our program participants. We are serving, probably because you see the single-person numbers, 42% of the participants are elderly or 62 years of age. Just like all California jurisdictions, there is quite a demand for affordable housing, particularly in coastal communities like Oceanside and where it's a desirable place to live. We have an extremely high demand for housing and programs such as the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and it's really needed to house our more vulnerable families. Currently, market rents in the city of Oceanside are about $2,600 an average monthly rent for a 2-bedroom unit. The Southern California Rental Association in their spring information of 2021 had a 2.3 vacancy rate for Oceanside. That usually anything below 2.8 is considered a tight rental market. Our current data shows that we have just over 6,800 very low-income families who are paying more than 50% of their income towards housing rent. And out of those, there's 3,330 that are at that extremely low. We're basically making minimum wage rates. The need for the Housing Choice Voucher is 4 times what we have actually available. Currently on our waiting list, we have over 4,500 families that are on that waiting list. 59% of those have an Oceanside live or work preference. We're currently saying that it's a 7-year waiting list, and that's because we are just now starting to pull applications of people who applied in 2015. So the biggest challenge that we deal with when it comes to housing in our department and Housing Choice Vouchers is the market we have in California, and particularly Southern California and the city of Oceanside. The ability of families to find housing within the program rents of the Housing Choice Voucher, and then all that competition that's out there, whether I have a voucher or not, or if I'm a family who's just really struggling, that competition for the decent and more affordable rents that's out there in the market, it's pretty big. And so those are our biggest challenges, whether we have the assistance level or not. We're dealing with a very, very tight rental market. So with the need to provide such critical rental assistance to our very low-income family, staff recommends that the CDC, adopt a resolution approving that submission of our plan to HUD with the inclusion of any changes made tonight, authorize the executive director as his designee to execute any and all related documents for submittal. Adoption of this resolution is what's going to allow the Housing Authority to continue to administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program here in Oceanside for our families. So I'm available to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any written requests to speak?
Yes, we do. We have one from Arlene Hammerschmidt.
Thank you. And this is a public hearing. Arlene? Which item did you want to speak on? Okay,
Oh, okay.
we'll fix that.
We'll take care of that.
We'll fix that. Okay. This is a public hearing. You do not have to actually submit a slip to speak. Anyone can speak on this matter specific to this item. So if you do wish to do that, please rise, approach the podium. When it's your turn, please give your name, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak. So, Mr. Knott.
Okay. Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. It was interesting in the presentation here that the 6,800 approximately of the residents here of the rental housing, they're paying 50% of their income for housing. The standard, at least over the past few years, and for my entire residency here in Oceanside, has been for low income and extreme low income has been 30%, because life standards for the other part of that income is necessary for that other 70%. Food, insurance, transportation, health, everything else takes from the rest of this. So what is being presented to you is if 50% of their income is going to that, their lives are being impacted dramatically. And I'll also bring up to the point of the minimum Social Security. The minimum Social Security, as I brought forward to everyone here before, and being the Senior Citizen of the Year, I have to bring this up because we have residents here in Oceanside that are getting less than $1,000 a month. And if you're having an average rent of $2,600, that tells you a lot. We need to quit looking at average rents. We have to take and look at the living style of income. And if that person doesn't have a living style of income, we need to somehow raise for all of our citizens to a basic level of standard of life. Otherwise, we're digging their graves. And if we're adding to that, I hate to say we're all carrying the shovels and we're all taking and helping dig their graves. Because if they're not able to take and buy their food, pay for everything else in life, whereas adequately taking and doing that, we're contributing to it by our ignorance and by our complacency. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knott. Yes. Up to 3 minutes, and please provide your name.
Hi, Katie Taylor. I'm just curious because the stats there showed, 49% of the people in the category were elderly, over 62. Well, I own in Costa Serena, and it's a 2-bedroom, and I rent for $1,600, which I think sounds outrageously high. But here's my bigger question. If people have been waiting on the waiting list since 2015 for these housing vouchers, how are they managing to live here for the last 7 years? So I don't buy in that all these people need the assistance of these housing vouchers. I certainly think probably the people on Social Security and fixed incomes do, but I'm saying I think that whole list is probably bloated. I agree our rents are way too high. Many people are paying a lot of money, but you know what? You go where you can afford to live.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Mayor, council, staff. I appreciate all the work that goes into this, but I also know that I'm just disturbed that we are making, or the comments, that we're making judgments about people without knowing that situation. I would like to see us work on the housing situation. Some of the recommendations I would say is that the school district has properties that could be available. And if we could take these two sides that seem to be at odds all the time and tend to work together, I know that the developers need to get affordable housing credits. We need affordable housing. Those school districts, yes, there's some issues around last mile and transportation, but imagine how many units we can do on one of those properties. So I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion. I'm not going to attack the work that staff is doing. I'm not going to think they're lying to us about it, because I know that data is out there and there's a lot going on with housing. And so I would say, let's see if we can find some suggestions and some out-of-the-box thinking to be able to help where we can, because we are in a blessed situation. And so if the housing pieces can be supported, I think there are other things that are available for us. I just had a conversation with a gentleman on the whole energy policy. The issues are we need to save money there so we can use that towards it. There's microgrid grants that Kern County just got one. Let's just think out of the box and not take housing as an isolated thing. We talk about holistically what people need to live. Let's put it all together. And so in lieu of us being in attack mode and basically calling folks liars, let's work together to try to find what the solutions are. We can be better. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I'm in Oceanside, Rob Howard, on Composition Court.
Thank you. Any other requests to speak from the public? I see no one else rising. I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the hearing and go back to the council. Councilmember Weiss.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. So when someone gets one of these vouchers, how long do they have it?
They have it until, as long as they're compliant with the program. Most of our participants have it for their lifetime unless their situation changes, their income changes, and they're no longer eligible. But as long as they meet the eligibility criteria and they're compliant with program rules, they maintain that voucher. And so that's why we don't necessarily always have a voucher to turn over and get people off the waiting list.
Thank you. And I take it the voucher goes to a specific individual, not the address. So if there are issues at that particular address that are unrelated to the voucher holder, whether it's criminal activity or police calls for service, those aren't reasons to rescind that voucher from that individual.
That's correct. It's related to the household, to the person, the participant.
Thank you. Move approval, staff recommendation.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
We're going to talk about California's failed housing policy for a minute. Sacramento has failed Californians in a horrific, disastrous way with how they approach housing. It's very, very important that we understand what the term affordable housing means. Affordable housing is a term that is tied to government-subsidized, taxpayer-funded housing, okay? What a lot of people mean when they say affordable housing is they mean housing affordability. They want to be able to work, eat, live, have a good quality of life, and affordable rent. Big difference. Affordable housing is government-subsidized housing, and the policies in California are meant to create traffic jams with housing, meaning you will never, ever have the supply necessary. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you push, the policies are set up for failure. I'll give you an example. Affordable housing, government-subsidized housing that we're asking developers to build, well, developers are given incentives in the form of variances on their application, but it really doesn't make sense to rent this unit out. They just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on without tax subsidy benefits that go with their business plan. So they can apply for 4 or 9% credits, and they have to go through a fine-tuned process and go before a board at the state level called the Low Income Housing Tax Board, and then they can get their tax subsidy from the state or federal government. Well, with all the requirements, there's only 7,500 units a year that are approved with this tax subsidy. We almost have that amount just in the city of Oceanside alone. So how can any developer apply for these incentives and variables enough to create the need and the demand that we keep trying to push down taxpayers' throats? There is no way it will ever happen. It's a setup for failure. And I agree, government subsidized housing. My mom, who was heavily abused by my father, ran from him. We had to be in a shelter, went into government subsidized housing by the grace of God. And I'm thankful for that. That was a transition. But then she moved on because she made more money, had a better life. And so she moved on. And so government subsidized housing for the majority should be a bridge to help individuals transition to a different stage of life. Now, if they're a senior and they're physically disabled or there's other dynamics going on, government's going to be taking care of them for the rest of their life. But our policies need to be built around reality. And the reality is 20% of the population will have to be taken care of by government with government subsidy for the rest of their life. The other 80% can probably be on a pathway living a better life, making more money, getting higher credentials or education, making more money, and achieve their version of the American dream. But when you have a state that creates policies set up for failure, this is the circus we have to deal with on a local level. Now, let me ask some other questions that are important. When somebody applies, what credentials or check boxes do they have to check to qualify to be on this, over 6,000 person list?
In order to participate in the program, they have to meet the income eligibility requirements. There are very stringent documentation that we look at, but it really is an income eligible program. So as long as they demonstrate
income,
that, then yes.
Got it. And can they apply in different cities at the same time?
They can, but usually, again, there's usually a preference if you live or work in that community.
And do they have to be Oceanside residents, or can they be from Escondido?
They could be from Escondido, but again, with the live-work preference and having 6,000 people.
I appreciate those answers. I just wanted the public to hear that. This is a circus, you guys. You can be from Chino Hills and apply to be on the list in Oceanside. You could be from Texas and apply to be on the list in Oceanside. This is unsustainable ridiculousness, okay? And until state level legislation changes, it's gonna be a circus. And we're gonna have these ridiculous meetings, and we're all gonna be after the same unrealistic goal, and it's nonsense. But it's a part of the game plan until we change that legislation. So my comments are over.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and second the motion. And I'd like to actually speak to this because what we're talking about is a 2-bedroom apartment and or possibly home, a very tiny one, probably, that's what is being built, for $2,600 a month. We're talking about our kids, adult kids, getting out of high school and trying to find a place to live. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about our workforce. We're talking about our hotel workers, our restaurant workers. We are talking about people, yes, they are here, and if you were to go door to door, including the number of poverty neighborhoods that we have in Oceanside, you would see that there are families, several families living in a very, very, very small space, trying to save up for that other place. We have some very heartbreaking areas in our community, heartbreaking. And if you ever have a chance to talk to someone who is on a list And yes, the preference is Oceanside. If you're on the county and you're on Oceanside, you're not going to get it. So this is something that is very critical to our economy, to supporting our businesses in Oceanside. And if anyone were to think that, this is something a city shouldn't have to do, and then, of course, how would the city help pay for this? This is a state, national, city partnership on how we are going to somehow match and ensure that our city is economically sustainable over time. So we're not talking about just our homeless. In fact, we're not even talking about homeless because we're talking about income levels. So this is a very difficult thing, I think, for anybody that works in this field, because we know that it's not enough. This is our portion that we get, and this is how we plan on trying to stretch the dollars to ensure that we have a workforce here for our restaurants, for our hotels, for our businesses. Someone that lives out in Temecula, Riverside County, is not going to drive all the way over here to work in a restaurant. So bottom line is, no, they don't. Bottom line is that this is very critical, this is very essential. Let's vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you. We're going to go back to item number 16, which is the last of our general items. And that is approval of a 6-month professional service agreement with Circuit to operate an electric vehicle shuttle program serving downtown Oceanside on a happier note, by the way, for the summer 2022 season that's coming up. Appropriation of $321,361 from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, and authorization for the city manager to execute the agreement. And we're going to begin with a report by Ms. Michelle Geller, our Economic Development Manager. Ms. Geller?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Michelle Geller, the Economic Development Manager, here to present an electric vehicle shuttle pilot program to operate in downtown Oceanside for this coming summer and fall. As Mayor stated, the recommendation tonight is for City Council to approve a professional services agreement with Circuit to operate an electric vehicle shuttle 6-month pilot program serving downtown Oceanside, and approve an appropriation of $321,361 from the ARPA fund to fund this program. Some background on the recommendation. Back in October of 2019, you may remember that FordX partnered with Main Street Oceanside to operate an on-demand electric vehicle shuttle pilot program in downtown Oceanside for about 6 weeks. The program was actually an R&D effort from an experimental arm of Ford, and not really intended as a long-term program. It received a lot of positive feedback from the community and sort of whet the appetite for people with regard to EV shuttles. So then, of course, several months later, you'll remember that COVID-19 hit, and 2 consecutive tourist seasons were impacted by health orders requiring social distancing and limiting activities, making an EV shuttle program really infeasible for 2020 and 2021. So thankfully, as you know, many COVID-19 restrictions were lifted in recent months, and this coming summer is expected to be a busy one in downtown Oceanside. An EV shuttle pilot program would move more people more efficiently and safely throughout downtown Oceanside, alleviate parking challenges, and provide a unique amenity to residents, also downtown workers, and of course, tourists. The timing appears to be appropriate to pilot an EV shuttle program. Given that time is of the essence, if the pilot program is to start up this summer, Circuit is the most well-positioned operator for the task. They currently operate EV shuttle programs for the city of San Diego. You might know about FRED, Free Rides Everywhere Downtown. That has been operating for a few years in San Diego. National City just signed on with Circuit, and Circuit also operates EV shuttle programs in Huntington Beach and Anaheim. And ARPA funds can be used for this pilot program under the Aid to Tourism, Travel, or Hospitality category. Circuit has a robust advertising department, and their sales reps we here are already excited about selling in the Oceanside market. As stated in the contract, Circuit will pay the city 50% of the net advertising revenue received, which is estimated to be up to $120,000. And then in addition, while the program is intended to start out free for riders, there is an option to charge a small fee, $2 to $3 per ride, as another way to offset costs to the city. So as a reminder, this is a pilot program, a short 6-month contract to try out this concept. Should the city wish to instate a more long-term program once this pilot ends, staff will release an RFP early next year to secure an operator to begin in the summer of 2023 and potentially beyond. So this is a pic of the vehicles that will be used. There will be 5 vehicles operating 7 days a week, 12 hours per day. We're starting out maybe 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., but we can adjust that. They hold 6 passengers, including the driver. They run on electric power at low speeds, and they are hailed on demand through an app. And the design of the vehicle is intentional for passenger comfort, so each passenger has easy boarding for that sort of hop-on, hop-off, trolley-like experience, but isn't, like shuffling past people to get to a seat, and then each passenger gets their own door, their own window seat with seat belts, which is safer than sort of the open, doorless design. So just to recap, the recommendation tonight is for City Council to approve a professional services agreement with Circuit to operate an electric vehicle shuttle 6-month pilot program serving downtown Oceanside and approve an appropriation of $321,361 from the ARPA fund. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. We also have Daniel Kramer here from Circuit who can answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have any requests to speak?
There are no requests to speak on this item.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
All right. I serve on the SANDAG board, and I represent the city of Oceanside. And we have about a $1.3 billion annual operating budget for the region under SANDAG. And recently, the board of directors approved 5 big moves, close to $170 billion regional plan focused on mass transit, which the county currently has an average of only a 3% ridership. So your tax dollars are about to get flushed down the toilet. And the innovators and forward thinkers of the board see the future of transportation in what we're doing here through this pilot program. You have an electric vehicle. You have the private sector partnering, advertising, offering a service that is convenient and easy. Key words here. If you want to get the public on to transportation, you need to make it convenient and easy. And so imagine a future where you could get your phone app out, and a part of the public transportation options is an Uber dynamic that is an electric vehicle, so it's great for the environment. And you have them pick them up where you are, and you have them drop you off, and you're sharing rides with other people, and it's optimized, and that's the future of transportation. And so I'm so glad we're moving on this program. I was excited. We did it the last 6 weeks. I actually rode on it. I loved the experience. I mean, I just heard tourists and residents, they were tipping. They loved it. We didn't break even, but I think we can fine tune those dynamics, obviously. And I think partnering with a reputable company like this, I'm excited. I want to see this program expanded. I want it to be optimized. I want it to be convenient. I want it to be easy. I would like to break even and make it as low cost to our residents as possible, but I think we have an obligation to approach breaking even for our residents and taxpayers here in Oceanside. I fully support this, and I'm looking forward to seeing some amazing numbers and raving reviews from the community so we can expand it and show SANDAG how it's done here in Oceanside. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jensen.
Yes, I fully support this as well. I think it'll alleviate some of our parking issues that we have downtown. I think it'll be great for the community. Do we have any numbers regarding the advertising in San Diego?
Thanks, Councilmember Jensen. I'll defer to Daniel on that. The estimate for us is around $120,000, but if Daniel has some.
Yeah, and those are estimates based on time of year. And with this being a shorter program, sometimes advertisers sign up for a year long, which they won't have the option for here. Downtown San Diego is obviously varied as well, especially with COVID. But that's typically in the $200,000, $300,000 range a year.
Okay, so 50% of the advertising revenue would come to the city, and you're anticipating that to be 60,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, just a correction. Actually, the 120,000, at least if we, in the contract was 50%, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's even better. Great.
Yes.
Okay,
It would
we
be the
love
full
that.
120 if we reach the sort of the max that is projected.
Yeah, I think it's going to be amazing. It's definitely a benefit to the city. The public parking will be more accessible now for our employees downtown to just get a ride, and I'm really excited. So thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and move approval. I am extremely excited about this. A couple of months ago, I approached Gumaro at Main Street and said, hey, get your plans out again because we need to really make this happen for this summer. The original plan was actually to purchase something like a trolley kind of, or some kind of like a bus kind of a thing. So they were going to be asking for something like $70,000 and looking forward to maintaining it and basically not asking for any more funds from the city. This is something different. This is a pilot project, and as staff has indicated, at some point we can go out and do an RFP and see how we can do this, get people moving in the downtown. Big issue is traffic. Obviously, it's trying to reduce the traffic, get people in the downtown area as well as hopefully South O and the harbor, and get people really hopping on and listen. I'm really excited about this. Okay, I'm really, really excited. And eventually, and I'd like to see this. I know we're just talking about this these 6 months, but eventually, I'd like to see this all year. Because we actually have really good weather all year round, and we have visitors all year round. Obviously, the highest is during the summer, and but this is really, really exciting, really, really exciting. So the ADA part of this, how does that work? Just last question here.
In terms of wheelchair accessibility?
Yeah.
So this pilot, there's not a plan. It's a special customized vehicle. We do have the ability to do that. If the picture that you saw of the vehicle on the screen,
yeah.
Essentially you take out the middle row of seats and add a ramp, and it can accommodate a wheelchair.
Okay,
However, this program for the pilot is not planned to have one.
Okay, because I saw that the thing in the back where the advertising is, I thought, well, maybe something goes in there, because it kind of built out.
Right,
bulked
that's
out.
more luggage, groceries.
I see.
It's a trunk.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's what it is. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you. We have no advance written requests to speak, so we're on number 19, communications from the public regarding items not on the agenda. How many do we have?
We have 5 speakers. Our first speaker is Mark Dice, to be followed by Katie Taylor, to be followed by
Mr. Dice.
Dwight Benner.
Hopefully a little more truthful tonight, huh?
Thanks for having me back, Council. I'm Professor Mark Dice, gender
Wait a minute. I don't think we asked you back, so you're coming back, right? Okay.
Thank you for having me back, Council. I'm Professor Mark Dice, teacher of gender studies at Cal State University. My pronouns are they and them. For decades, my colleagues and I have been working behind the scenes to set the groundwork to dismantle the nuclear family and institute the cultural Marxist revolution that we're now seeing out in the open. We're extremely thrilled that Disney has announced that they're committing to making a slew of LGBTQAI characters in the very near future. And our sources have revealed that the next full feature film starring Mickey Mouse, titled Mickey Mouse in Bohemian Grove, Mickey Mouse will come out as bisexual. However, the general public has probably seen the Zoom calls from the Disney executive Zoom meetings, and this plan was supposed to be implemented incrementally, and so now there's some backlash to this. So thankfully, our Operation Mockingbird assets and the mainstream media are working with a full concerted effort to promote the propaganda that this is fantastic, that this is liberating, and also the opposition is being deemed QAnon conspiracy theorists, which is a very great tactic in order to silence them and to demean them. Now, we know that some people are still communicating on Facebook and Twitter, social media platforms, in opposition to the gay agenda. And so thankfully, we've been in communication with them through our assets in the Sun Valley Conference in order to have most of those posts taken down and deemed hate speech, which is a violation of the terms of service. So we can control the narrative largely on Facebook, Twitter, the big social media platforms, not so much on some of the other alternative platforms. We still haven't been able to infiltrate them, but we're still working on that. Now, we have seen even some supposed conservative institutions, the Blaze TV, PragerU, are almost on board. They've recently endorsed gay surrogacy with Dave Rubin. So we don't expect much resistance from them. However, there still is a lot of people who are talking about what the agenda is, and they're creating a lot of buzz. This might get into our way. And so we're, again, the best tactic we found is to either call them QAnon conspiracy theorists or just call them Nazis, call them white supremacists. Nobody wants to defend a Nazi. Still a lot of homophobia out there. A lot of people will still endorse the homophobia. A lot of Christians still out there will endorse that, but nobody wants to defend a Nazi. So anybody who is opposed to the agenda, we highly recommend just call them a Nazi or call them a racist. And we've seen such tremendous progress over the years. We've seen figures that were once relegated to the Jerry Springer show now teaching elementary school to the children. And there's little that anybody can do to stop it because the Marxist Democrats have solidified this into the law. The teachers are making videos on TikTok about coming out as gender non-binary. And a lot of people are still uncomfortable.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, subscribe to the Mark Dice YouTube channel for more information.
Yeah, you're a comedian, right? Yeah.
Katie Taylor, to be followed by Dwight H. Benner, to be followed by Sandy Beal.
Okay, Katie Taylor, Fire Mountain, Oceanside. I'm back to speak again about closing Lagoon View Road. I want to provide an update because I think this is a really necessary fix to stop the illegal overnight parking, more massive amounts of trash and shopping carts strewing all over Lagoon View and Jefferson Street, the ramp there off the freeway. All this is right next to the Buena Vista Lagoon, which is an ecological reserve. The good news, I called Oceanside Police Parking Enforcement. There's a picture in there. The derelict motorhome has been removed. I had to call twice, but it's gone now. And an officer actually contacted me today to make sure that I knew it had been removed. And I thanked him for the call. And then I said, can I ask you a question? Even though they left a big pile of trash where the motorhome used to be. I asked him a question. If he agreed with my idea of closing Lagoon View Road, make the street only available to police and emergency vehicles. He agreed with me 100%. And he said to me he hopes somebody would champion the cause. I told him I guess that would be me. Because this is a constant problem for law enforcement over there to keep that area clean. Bottom line, the road and the sidewalk both need to be closed off with no trespassing signs. Off Lagoon View, sidewalk, the paths, you can see, show the paths. You can see the paths in the picture from the street. That's where they take the shopping carts. They roll the shopping carts down the side of the embankment there. And now there's even more tents than there were 2 weeks ago. And it's going to continue to be that until we close off that road. We're going to have more homeless tents. These are stolen shopping carts. And you can see what it's looking like down there. When you pull up on the freeway, it's so disgusting, whether you're coming from the east or the west, and you see this line of tents and shopping carts. So I'm hoping I can convince everybody here that this is an action we can take. It'll be easy to do. I think it goes right along with the Buena Vista Lagoon committee that's been formed. I think they would be, in fact, I think Corey Jensen, council, and Esther Sanchez are both on that committee. And I think they should jump up and cheer if we could get that road closed. It's the Buena Vista Lagoon Joint Powers Committee. So I'm asking you, everybody, today, this is something we can do. It'll save the city money with that road closed off and start to mitigate the problem of the homeless tents and shopping carts. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight Benner?
Good evening, Mayor Sanchez, members of the City Council, and the City of Oceanside staff. My name is Dwight H. Benner, and I'm a resident at the Ranchos San Luis Rey Mobile Home Park. I'm here to request that you, as our city leaders, look into the way that our annual health and safety inspection was conducted. I'm absolutely appalled at how the City of Oceanside Code Enforcement Department handled their inspection this year at our park. This solidifies that the disabled, blind, and aged communities are not a priority in our seaside city. Your representative, Olga Lugan, took approximately 30 minutes to inspect the largest 55 and older mobile home park in Oceanside. Her short inspection will cause almost a $20 hike in space rent in an already failing economy for disabled, blind, and aged population. I would like to request that the annual health and safety inspection be done again, and this time have both the fire department and the code enforcement office collaborate together to come to a cohesive and accurate inspection. It is unfair that the City of Oceanside did not think highly enough of their residents. Mayor Sanchez, I sent you an email on March 3rd in the morning asking for the inception of a Mayor's Commission on Aging. At this time, I've had no response from your office. The inception of this commission would oversee the relevant issues and offer viable solutions for our disabled, blind, and aged community. My last thought, may I suggest that you as our leaders make this disabled, blind, and aged population, which of course includes our veterans as well, a priority. Remember, senior lives matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy Beal, to be followed by Arlene Hammerschmidt.
Honorable Mayor Sanchez and council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Just have a few points regarding Rancho San Luis Rey's annual health and safety inspection. Well, we didn't pass. We were in non-compliance, which was okay. That was on the 3rd of March. That was the day that we had our inspection. And I got this about a few days after that, maybe the 10th. Yesterday, I got one that says we're in compliance, but it also has it has all of the same information. I think it needs to be on a different form. It isn't, to me, it's not correct. Then I wanted to talk about a couple emails that I've received from Olga Lugan. One I want to talk about from March of 2021. This is in her words, management told me that they're in the process of contracting to repair driveways. And they said they will list the driveways, a list would be submitted. Okay, these were dropped from the inspection list this year. The isolation valves need to be up to code. This was dropped from the inspection list. Okay, now an email from Olga Lugan again this year, February 9, 2022. The water isolation valve issues are being addressed by the fire department. They are the lead enforcing arm for this violation. That has not changed. Yes, it has to be on the health and safety inspection as a violation, and it's not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arlene Hammerschmidt.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members and all. Arlene Hammerschmidt, Ruralish Fire Mountain. Question, remember when OPD had serious trust issues within and with many of our communities and community leaders? Those trust issues are being resolved under Chief Armijo. Congratulations, everyone here. A great and successful strategy, which included community leaders in the interview team. Who who is the official face and voice for the city? To the public, the media, in cases of emergency, pandemics, fire, catastrophe, et cetera, who is leading the city's departments and divisions? Who in the city most needs to hold the public's trust? Our city manager. Our city manager. The face of the city needs to be the most trusted person in our city. Therefore, I urge the selection process for our new city manager be open and transparent, even more so than the last Ocean OPD chief process. That it include community leaders of all demographics and affiliations on the interview panel and selection process, and that panel be balanced between the usual suspects and younger leaders in our communities. Residents need to trust our city manager even more deeply than we trust our chief of police. This is really important to our city. So please, please make this process even more transparent and more community involved than that we used for the selection of our excellent Chief Armijo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we do have a member of the public. This is her first meeting, and she didn't realize that she had to register prior before the item, and she would like to speak tonight.
I'll allow it.
Okay. Madam?
Good evening. My name is Maria. I kind of am talking about the same subject as Ms. Taylor.
What's your name again?
Maria Tillens. I live in the Fire Mountain area, and it has been happening to us right on Laurel that homeless go and steal the mail. And not only the mail, any kind of package. A couple of nights ago it happened, and you can tell which direction they're going because they're discarding mail. And I know that there is something you can do. I went to check the mailboxes with the key, and they're about $150 or so. But I think the problem is because we have the homeless, right where this lady was talking about, off of Jefferson, take a right, and I think is that the street that you're talking about? There is no point to that street. It is only for people that are living on their motor homes or homeless people. There is nothing there. I used to take my dogs there down the lagoon. I no longer take them because I run into all kinds of horrible people. I used to take them over there by the Sprinter, and you can run into all kinds of people. My son went and talked to the homeless people right there by the Sprinter and offered them money because they stole some parts for a motorcycle. And the guy says, yeah, we know who they are and blah, blah, blah. So he talked to a cop, and the cop said, you know what, you should not go into those areas. There is a encampment in there where the all that empty area, way in the back, and there is people that are living there, and they have dogs, and he says they even have booby traps. And I'm thinking, our cops are afraid of that? My husband always keeps on telling me, please don't go there by yourself, not even with the big 2 German Shepherds, because I'm afraid that they're gonna do something to me. You know what? I'm not afraid of it. But I'm thinking, our cops are aware of that, and they don't go in there to do something about it? Are you guys not exposed to the homeless? I just wonder, are you, Mr. Rodriguez? Maybe you don't live here, but I run into them all the time. And I'm sorry, but I'm not one of those bleeding hearts. You know, my girlfriend used to say, you know, we gotta let people come into the country because they're so, and I say, you know what, Pam? Are you willing to set up a tent behind your house and let them set up house?
Thank you very much.
I'm not. I'm not willing to share that with them.
Thank you. Okay. We are now on general council member comments. Councilmember Rodriguez?
Thank you for coming and speaking twice in reference to the area by the lagoon and coming. I know it takes a lot to drive out here and share your comments, and I agree completely with you. I report about at least one on average a week of illegal encampments. I take a photo, I send an email, and staff is on it, and they make it happen. And so number one thing I want to say is we have to report illegal encampments to the city of Oceanside, and it has to be something that is trackable. You can download the app. If you're not comfortable with the app, you can call the 1-800 or the city. It's not a 1-800 number. I don't know it by heart, but does anybody have it? You guys got the city number? Yeah, whatever that city number is, I apologize, but customer service tracks those, and it goes to code enforcement, who makes a stop, says, hey, what's going on? And then the homeless outreach team comes along, tells them they need to move along, puts a notice, offers services, because by state and federal law, with what we have to navigate without, to avoid a lawsuit against our city, we have to offer resources. And we have these programs available. So the more eyes and ears, putting pressure, calling the cops, calling the city, telling them we want this moved, we're going to continuously put pressure and ask those individuals to move on or receive services and get your life together and move on to better things, right? We don't want to make it comfortable to be homeless. That's not a city's job. That's unfortunate. If we're making it comfortable to be homeless, that's evil, in my opinion. I think we need to help people move to be better, have a better life. And so the word I like to use is compassionately accountable. When we're using your tax dollars, we need to be compassionately accountable in every effort we do with respect to city services or social programs like offering help with the homeless. If I have a question do you have a police representative in the House that's able to speak, or maybe it's just a city manager? What is the current protocol for our police officers who, I'm assuming they're overwhelmed with complaints and calls for service on, things that are more important than a homeless encampment that's on, illegally set up. What is the normal protocol, or maybe you can get back to my office on what the protocol is with the police chief on if an officer sees an illegal encampment? Are they obligated or requested to put a request in, or is that something that's not a part of their job description?
Honorable Mayor.
Mr. Borrego?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council members, yes. Certainly when we see encampments or when our field personnel see encampments that are large in size and catch our attention, we do move to act on them. Okay. So to answer your question, yes. I will also take this opportunity to mention, as I've mentioned to some of you, that we are actively looking to close off that street. Okay. One of the things that we do want to ensure, though, is by closing it off, that we're not also at the same time reducing surveillance into the area. So that's the conversation that we're having right now, to make sure that by closing it, we're not essentially creating a no man's land that may make this situation worse. So we are prioritizing it, and definitely we'll be focusing resources on that area.
Okay, thank you very much. And as a city, unfortunately, it's not, when looking at the homeless issue, and I'll hurry up, this has been a longer meeting, our, resources have to focus on, a triage of issues that we respond to as a city. And it's not illegal to be homeless. So if somebody wants to be homeless and set up camp at midnight, and in the morning we all see them, we respond to that, and then we ask them to move, and they move. And if they take a resource, if the individual takes a resource and moves on with their life, great. But what I've seen is majority don't want help. And so they move, and then they just move somewhere else. And then now we do a new call for service, and it's this shuffling dynamic. And until state laws change, which I hope and pray we get to that point, this is all we can do. It's a constant work in progress. And my commitment, and I know my colleagues agree, we're going to continue to enforce our laws, offer resources, and ask individuals to move on if they don't want to follow the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. What I want to say is Happy Easter Happy Passover. We are going to meet again before that, but that'll be a workshop. So I just want to go ahead and adjourn this meeting to Mayor Council Workshop on Wednesday, April 13th, 2022, 2 p.m. to discuss our fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Thank you very much.